For years, I thought if I just got better, the work would come. Better photos, better video, better editing, better gear. I believed talent was the bottleneck, but I was wrong. And that misunderstanding cost me time and probably money, because talent isn't always what gets you hired. My name is Nolan Matthews. I'm a photographer, director, and pilot based in Utah. After nearly a decade in the corporate world, I walked away to build a life around travel, adventure, and storytelling. This channel is all about the work, the process, and the stories behind it all. Creative culture sells us a very romantic idea. If you're talented enough, you'll be discovered. If your work is good enough, it will speak for itself. If you just outwork everyone, the momentum will follow. And I bought into that completely. So I obsessed over improvement. I studied photographers ahead of me. I analyzed campaigns. I rebuilt my portfolio constantly. I upgraded gear that I probably didn't really need. And my work genuinely improved. But my income didn't, my consistency didn't, and the predictability of work coming in certainly didn't. That's when the doubt starts creeping in. If I get better, then why isn't this changing? Here's what typically happens next. When better doesn't fix the problem, you assume the problem is still your talent. So you double down, you tweak, you refine, you buy, you compare. And eventually that question shifts from why isn't this working to maybe I'm just not good enough. And that's the trap, because most talented creatives don't stall due to lack of ability. They stall because they misunderstand what clients are actually buying. Imagine that you're a marketing director for a brand and you're staking your current paycheck or maybe even your career on this big campaign you have to shoot. Now, do you imagine you would find the most artistically sound creative for the job, or the one who will deliver you a sure thing? Clients are not hiring you to admire your art. They are hiring you to reduce risk. When a marketing director chooses a creative, they're thinking, will this project stay organized? Will this hit deadlines? Will this stay within our budget? Will this make me look competent internally? Will this solve the business problem we're trying to solve? Notice what's missing. No one is sitting there asking, is this the most talented person available? Because once you're good enough, and if you're being considered, you are good enough, talent becomes assumed. It's table stakes. The differentiator becomes clarity, positioning, trust, and communication. That's what actually moves the needle. In the past, I would avoid projects that were completely outside of my core niches. If it didn't fit neatly into my portfolio, if I couldn't show something almost identical, I just would never consider a project like that, because I ultimately assumed that I wasn't qualified. Recently though, I've began tweaking that a little bit, and a couple of weeks ago, I bid on a project that was completely out of my lane. It was for an e-learning startup that wanted an Apple-style commercial to introduce their product. Clean, simple, strategic, very software as a service. Did I have a polished SaaS portfolio to show them? No. Did I have a reel full of Apple-inspired product spots? Definitely not. An old me would have said, I'm just not the guy for this. But instead of focusing on what I didn't have, I focused on the problem they were trying to solve, and I threw my hat in the ring. They weren't hiring someone to make something pretty. They were trying to introduce a product in a way that felt clear, trustworthy, and valuable to parents and students who would ultimately be using their product. And what I realized is I've solved that kind of problem many times before, just not in this particular space, but certainly in the other industries that I've shot for. So when I reached out, I didn't lead with, here's my portfolio. I led with, hey, you're trying to solve a problem, and here's how I think about launching something new. Here's how I'd approach it, and here's how I'd position it. I spoke their language. I talked about strategy, certainly not about cameras and lenses, and ultimately we got a meeting. Now, In this particular case, we didn't ultimately land the job because there was a misalignment on budget. But here's what actually mattered and why I took it away as a win. After we were done, the CEO followed up with us and said we were the only creative team who actually spoke their language, the only ones who addressed the business problems directly. And that's the shift. Talent didn't get us that meeting, clarity and communication did. And that was the moment that I realized that talent may get you attention, but clarity is what earns you trust. Here's specifically what I've gotten wrong for so long. I thought being impressive was always the goal, but being impressive and being hireable are not the same thing. I was broad instead of specific in the beginning. I wanted to shoot everything for everyone in every niche. I wanted to feel creative, but ultimately I felt risky to clients because I focused on showcasing my work instead of communicating the outcomes that work generated. I assumed people would connect the dots automatically, but they don't. And I underestimated how much professionalism matters. Clear proposals, defined scope, calm communication, under-promising and over-delivering consistently. That's not glamorous, that's what builds momentum. And by the way, this starts from the moment you interact with a new client. Is the communication streamlined? Is this easy? Does this person show up when they say they will? It may seem small, but these are signals. And if you can't do the little things right, why would anyone assume that you can deliver the big project for them? Once I realized that talent wasn't my own bottleneck, I stopped obsessing over being better and I started obsessing over being clearer. Clear about who I serve, clear about the problems I solve, and clear about how I communicate. Certainly clear about how I show up. And that shift has kind of changed everything. It certainly didn't happen overnight, but things have become more predictable. Talent gets you in the room, but clarity is what gets you hired. And then ultimately, trust is what gets you called back. If you're stuck, it's probably not because you're not good enough. It's probably because you're solving the wrong problem and you're communicating what you do ineffectively. And those are completely fixable problems.